The missed call notification glared at Cassidy Scott from her phone screen, followed immediately by a text message that made her heart sink. We regret to inform you that the gallery position has been filled. 3 months of job hunting with nothing to show for it except mounting bills and dwindling savings. She tossed her phone onto her second-hand couch and buried her face in her hands, wondering how she was going to make rent this month. The art history degree that had once filled her with so much hope now seemed like a cruel joke. At 27, she'd imagined she'd be curating exhibits, not serving coffee at a small cafe to make ends meet. Cassidy's phone buzzed again. This time, it was her roommate, Zoe. "Hey, weird request. My boss needs a date for some fancy charity gala tonight. His usual +1 canceled last minute. He's willing to pay $500. Interested?" Cassidy stared at the message. $500 would cover half her rent. For one night of pretending to be someone's date? It seemed too good to be true. "What's the catch?" she typed back. "No catch. You show up, look pretty, make small talk. My boss is a private guy who hates attending these things alone. The press always speculates about his love life, and he's tired of it." "Who exactly is your boss?" Cassidy asked. "Finn Hartmann." Cassidy nearly dropped her phone. Everyone in New York knew that name. Finn Hartmann, the 30-year-old tech genius who had built Hartmann Innovations, from his college dorm room into a billion-dollar empire. His face regularly appeared on business magazines, and rumor had it he was worth north of $800 million. "You can't be serious," Cassidy replied. "Completely serious. He's actually a decent guy, just intensely private. The event starts at 8. Say yes, and I'll text you the details." Cassidy looked around her tiny apartment. The stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter seemed to stare back at her, mockingly. What did she have to lose? "I'll do it," she typed, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. 3 hours later, Cassidy stood in front of her mirror, hardly recognizing herself. She'd splurged on a blowout at a neighborhood salon and had pulled out the one designer dress she owned, a midnight blue silk gown she'd found at a consignment shop last year. It hugged her curves perfectly and made her green eyes pop against her pale skin and dark hair. Her doorbell rang at exactly 7:30 p.m. Taking a deep breath, she opened it to find a tall man in an impeccably tailored tuxedo standing there. Finn Hartmann was even more handsome in person than in his photos. His dark blonde hair was styled neatly, and his striking blue eyes assessed her with cool detachment. "Cassidy Scott?" he asked, his deep voice surprisingly gentle. "Yes," she said, extending her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Hartmann." "Finn, please." He shook her hand briefly. "Zoe speaks highly of you. Thank you for agreeing to this on such short notice." $500 is persuasive," Cassidy said before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Honest, I appreciate that." He glanced at his watch. "Shall we?" A sleek black Bentley waited at the curb. As the driver opened the door for them, Cassidy felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. The leather seats were butter soft, and the interior smelled of expensive cologne and new car. "So," Finn began as the car pulled away, "we should establish our story. How did we meet?" Cassidy thought for a moment. "Through work? I could be a consultant you hired for an art acquisition project." He raised an eyebrow. "You know about art?" "I have a master's degree in art history, hence my current job serving lattes instead of curating exhibits." For the first time, Finn really looked at her, curiosity replacing his businesslike demeanor. "That's actually perfect. I recently started collecting contemporary art for my offices. We met 6 months ago when I hired you to help build my collection." Cassidy nodded. "And we kept in touch. Started dating casually about 2 months ago." "Good." He handed her a small velvet box. "You should wear this." Inside was a delicate diamond bracelet that probably cost more than her annual salary. "I can't accept this," she said immediately. "It's just for tonight," he explained. "To make things look convincing. You can return it to me afterward." Reluctantly, she allowed him to fasten it around her wrist, trying not to react to the brush of his fingers against her skin. "One more thing," Finn said, his expression serious. "The press will be there. They'll want to know everything about you. Just smile, be vague, and let me handle any difficult questions." "Why me?" Cassidy asked suddenly. You must know dozens of women who would kill to be your date. That's precisely the problem, he replied. I needed someone with no connection to my social circle, someone who wouldn't read too much into this arrangement or leak stories to the tabloids afterward. He looked at her thoughtfully. Zoe said you were trustworthy and intelligent. That's rare in my world. The car pulled up to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where a red carpet led up the famous steps. Camera flashes began popping as soon as their driver opened the door. Ready? Finn asked, offering his arm. Cassidy took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, the world transformed into a dizzying blur of lights and shouted questions. Finn's hand came to rest protectively at the small of her back, guiding her forward with practiced ease. He smiled for the cameras, a perfect practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. Mr. Hartmann, who's your date tonight? Finn, over here. Is this a serious relationship? He handled it all with the smooth confidence of someone accustomed to the spotlight, occasionally answering with charming but non-committal responses. This is Cassidy Scott. We're enjoying a lovely evening together. That's all you're getting tonight, gentlemen. Inside, the museum's grand hall had been transformed into an elegant ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in white linen and centerpieces of white orchids and roses. The city's elite mingled, their jewelry catching the light with every movement. Champagne? Finn asked, snagging 2 flutes from a passing waiter. Thank you, Cassidy said, taking a sip to calm her nerves. This is overwhelming. You're doing fine, he assured her. Better than fine. Actually, you look like you belong here. Before she could respond, a silver-haired man approached them, clapping Finn on the shoulder. Hartmann, about time you showed your face, and with such charming company. The man turned to Cassidy with an appraising look that made her skin crawl. I don't believe we've met. Cassidy Scott, she said, extending her hand with more confidence than she felt. Cassidy is an art consultant, Finn added, his hand returning to the small of her back. She's been helping me develop the collection for my new headquarters. Is that so? The man's eyebrows rose. What's your take on the Bausch installation in the West Wing? Overrated garbage or revolutionary statement? Cassidy recognized the name immediately. Klaus Bausch was a controversial German artist whose work polarized critics. This was clearly a test. Neither, she answered honestly. His early work showed genuine innovation, particularly his deconstructed landscape series, but his recent installations feel derivative, more focused on shock value than substance. The piece here tonight is somewhere in between technically impressive, but emotionally hollow. The man stared at her for a moment, before breaking into a booming laugh. Well said, young lady. He turned to Finn. She's not just a pretty face, is she? You've finally found one with brains. After he walked away, Finn leaned close to her ear. That was the museum's biggest donor. He's been trying to get me to invest in his son's terrible art app for months. His breath was warm against her skin. I think you just saved me from that fate. Well played. The night unfolded in a series of similar encounters. Cassidy found herself engaged in conversations about art movements, market trends, and museum politics subjects she actually knew and loved. For brief moments, she almost forgot this was all pretend. During dinner, Finn surprised her by asking thoughtful questions about her background and education. He seemed genuinely interested in her opinions about the pieces in the museum's collection. You really do know your art, he remarked as they finished their main course. Why aren't you working in the field? Cassidy sighed. The usual story. Not enough connections, too many qualified candidates for too few positions. The gallery world is notoriously difficult to break into without family ties or someone championing you. That seems wasteful, he said, frowning slightly. Talent should be recognized regardless of connections. That's a lovely sentiment, but not how the real world works, she replied with a small smile. Hence my thriving career as a barista. The orchestra began playing a waltz, and couples moved toward the dance floor. To Cassidy's surprise, Finn stood and offered his hand. Shall we? She hesitated. I should warn you, I haven't danced like this since a mandatory class in college. I'll lead, he said simply, and lead he did. Finn moved with the natural grace of someone who had been raised attending events like this. His hand was warm and firm against her back as he guided her across the floor. making even her occasional missteps seem intentional. "People are watching us," she whispered, noticing the curious glances. "They always watch," he replied. "It's what they do best. Just focus on me." Cassidy looked up into his face and was struck by something vulnerable in his expression, something that hadn't been there before. For the first time that evening, he didn't look like a billionaire tech mogul playing a part. He looked like a man holding a woman he found intriguing. The thought sent an unexpected thrill through her. When the dance ended, Finn didn't immediately let her go. "You're full of surprises, Cassidy Scott," he said quietly. The spell was broken by a striking blonde woman who approached them with a predatory smile. "Finn, darling, I thought that was you." His posture instantly stiffened. "Vanessa, I didn't know you'd be here." "Last-minute invitation," she purred, barely acknowledging Cassidy's presence. "You've been dodging my calls." "I've been busy," he said flatly. "Too busy for an old friend?" Vanessa pouted dramatically before finally turning to Cassidy. "And who might you be?" Before Cassidy could answer, Finn's arm slid around her waist. "This is Cassidy, my girlfriend." The word hung in the air between them. Girlfriend, not date, not companion. He'd just escalated their fake relationship significantly. "Girlfriend?" Vanessa repeated, her eyes narrowing. "How unexpected. Finn doesn't usually do relationships, do you, darling?" "People change," he replied coolly. Vanessa's gaze raked over Cassidy, assessing and dismissive. "Well, enjoy your evening. We should catch up soon, Finn. I have that investment opportunity to discuss." After she stalked away, Cassidy turned to him. "Ex-girlfriend?" "Ex-mistake," Finn corrected. "Sorry about that. She's been trying to get me to invest in her fashion line for months." "You have a lot of people trying to get money from you," Cassidy observed. His smile was tinged with bitterness. "Welcome to my world. Everyone wants something." "Even me," she pointed out. "I'm here for the paycheck, remember?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Yes, of course." He checked his watch. "It's getting late. We should make our exit before the speeches begin, unless you want to stay." Cassidy shook her head. "I have an early shift tomorrow." As they made their way toward the exit, Finn was stopped repeatedly by people wanting to chat or take photos. He handled each interruption with polite efficiency, always keeping Cassidy close by his side, occasionally introducing her as "my Cassidy" in a way that sounded surprisingly genuine. Outside, as they waited for his car, the night air was cool and refreshing after the crowded museum. Cassidy shivered slightly, and Finn immediately removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, breathing in the scent of him that clung to the expensive fabric. "For the jacket and for tonight. It wasn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" he asked, studying her face. "I don't know. Someone more arrogant, I guess. Less—" She struggled to find the right word. "Human," he suggested with a wry smile. "Real," she decided. "You seemed real, at least some of the time." His car arrived, interrupting whatever he might have said in response. They rode in comfortable silence back to her apartment building, a pre-war walk-up that looked especially shabby after the opulence of the evening. "I should return this," Cassidy said, reaching to unfasten the diamond bracelet as they pulled up to her building. "Keep it until tomorrow," Finn said suddenly. "I'd like to talk to you about something. Are you free for lunch?" Cassidy blinked in surprise. "I work until 2. "Then I'll pick you up at 2:15. Where's your cafe?" She gave him the address, confused by this unexpected development. "What do you want to talk about?" "A business proposition," he said. "Something mutually beneficial." Cassidy's mind raced with possibilities. Was he going to offer her another fake date? Something more permanent? The thought sent a confusing mix of emotions through her. "I'll see you tomorrow then," she said, slipping off his jacket and handing it back. Their fingers brushed, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Finn leaned forward slightly, then seemed to catch himself. "Good night, Cassidy," he said formally. "Thank you for your company this evening." "Good night, Finn." As she climbed the stairs to her 4th-floor apartment, Cassidy couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted during those few hours. She'd gone expecting to play a role and collect a paycheck. Instead, she'd glimpsed something behind the millionaire facade that had left her intrigued and, if she was honest with herself, a little off balance. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Cassidy woke early, the diamond bracelet glittering on her nightstand. Last night felt like a dream, the kind where you're living someone else's life, only to wake up and return to your own reality. Her reality was a cramped apartment with temperamental plumbing and a job that had nothing to do with her passions or education. She slipped the bracelet into her purse, knowing she would return it to Finn that afternoon, along with whatever his business proposition might be. The cafe was busier than usual, a constant stream of customers keeping Cassidy too occupied to dwell on her upcoming meeting. Her coworker, Tessa, noticed her distraction anyway. "You look tired," Tessa commented during a rare lull. "Hot date last night?" "Something like that," Cassidy replied, not wanting to get into details. How could she possibly explain that she'd been a paid escort for one of the richest men in New York? "Well, whoever he is, he's got you all flustered. Your mind's been a million miles away all morning." Before Cassidy could respond, the door chimed, and she looked up to see Finn entering the cafe. Her heart gave a strange little leap. He was dressed more casually than the previous night, in dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Without the tuxedo, he looked younger, more approachable, but no less striking. The cafe fell oddly quiet as several patrons recognized him. Finn seemed not to notice, his eyes finding Cassidy immediately. "You're early," she said, suddenly conscious of her plain black uniform and the coffee stains on her apron. Meeting finished sooner than expected. His gaze swept over the cafe. "Is this a bad time?" "I'm off in 15 minutes. Would you like something while you wait?" He ordered a black coffee and took a seat in the corner, pulling out his phone. Cassidy could feel Tessa's wide-eyed stare burning into her back. "That's Finn Hartmann," Tessa hissed when Cassidy returned to the counter. "The Finn Hartmann. What is he doing here?" "We have mutual friends," Cassidy said vaguely. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal? Cass, the man is worth like $1 billion, and he's waiting for you." Cassidy finished her shift under the curious stares of both customers and co-workers. When she finally hung up her apron and grabbed her purse from the back room, her hands were shaking slightly with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Finn stood when she approached his table. "Ready?" he asked. Outside, his car waited at the curb. As they settled into the back seat, Cassidy pulled the diamond bracelet from her purse. "I should return this," she said, holding it out to him. Finn looked at it for a moment before gently closing her fingers back over the bracelet. "Consider it a thank you gift. You saved me from at least 3 tedious business pitches last night." "I can't accept a diamond bracelet for making small talk," she protested. "It's too much." "Is it the monetary value that bothers you, or something else?" His gaze was penetrating, as if he could see right through her discomfort to the root of it. Cassidy thought for a moment. "Both, I guess. It feels transactional, like you're paying me for services rendered beyond our original agreement." "I see." He nodded, taking the bracelet from her hand. "Then I'll hold on to it for now." The car pulled up to a small but elegant restaurant in the West Village. It was the kind of place Cassidy had walked past many times but never entered, knowing it was far outside her budget. Inside, they were led to a private corner table. After they ordered, Finn leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "I have a proposal for you," he began. "One that would benefit us both." Cassidy braced herself. "I'm listening." "I need someone like you, intelligent, knowledgeable about art, and clearly capable of handling herself in social situations, to help me build my art collection and navigate certain social obligations over the next 6 months." "Like a personal curator?" Cassidy asked, surprised. "Partly, yes, but also—" He hesitated. "I need someone to continue playing the role you played last night. My girlfriend." Cassidy stared at him. "You want to hire me to pretend to be your girlfriend? For 6 months? I'll pay you generously $20,000 a month, plus expenses. You'd have to attend events with me, help me select artwork for my homes and offices, and generally be seen with me at social functions. In return, you'd gain connections in the art world that could help launch your actual career." "Why?" Cassidy asked, trying to process the enormity of what he was suggesting. "Why not just date someone for real?" Finn's expression closed off slightly. "My personal life has become a liability. The press scrutinizes everyone I'm seen with. Investors question my focus if I appear too social. And frankly, most women I meet have agendas that have nothing to do with me as a person. And I don't have an agenda? Cassidy couldn't help asking. You're transparent about yours, he replied with a small smile. You want to work in the art world. I can help make that happen. While you help keep the wolves at bay in my personal life, it's a business arrangement with mutual benefits. Cassidy's mind raced. $20,000 a month would change her entire life. She could pay off her student loans, maybe even start looking for her own place. And the connections she could make in the art world through Finn would be invaluable. But pretending to be his girlfriend for 6 months, that seemed complicated. What exactly would this entail? She asked cautiously. I mean, what would be expected of me? Public appearances, some travel to art fairs and auctions, dinners with business associates, nothing intimate, he added quickly, seemingly reading her concern. Just convincingly couple-like in public. And what happens after 6 months? We break up amicably. You move on to the career you actually want, with my recommendation and support. I return to focusing entirely on work without the constant press speculation about my love life. It sounded so neat, so transactional. Yet Cassidy couldn't ignore the way her pulse had quickened when he walked into the cafe earlier, or the flutter she'd felt when they danced the night before. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Finn nodded. Of course, it's a significant commitment. He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. My personal number. Call me when you decide, either way. After lunch, he drove her home, maintaining a respectful but warm demeanor throughout. As they said goodbye, Cassidy found herself studying his face, trying to reconcile the businesslike proposal with the man who had looked at her so intensely on the dance floor. Thank you for considering this, Finn said as she stepped out of the car. Whatever you decide, I enjoyed your company last night. It was refreshing. For the next 3 days, Cassidy could think of little else besides Finn's offer. She made pro and con lists, consulted with Zoe, who thought she was insane to hesitate, and stared at his business card until she had memorized the number written on the back. In the end, what decided her wasn't the money, though that was certainly compelling. It was the memory of how alive she'd felt discussing art with the museum donors, the way her education and passion had suddenly become valuable again after months of feeling useless. On the 4th day, she called him. I'll do it, she said when he answered, but I have conditions. I'm listening, Finn replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. First, I want a contract that clearly outlines my duties and the boundaries of this arrangement. Second, I want to continue my job search. During this time, this can't interfere with my long-term career goals. And third, she took a deep breath. If at any point this feels wrong or uncomfortable for either of us, we can terminate the agreement without penalty. All reasonable requests, Finn said. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork. When can you start? I need to give notice at the cafe. 2 weeks? Perfect. I have a charity auction at Sotheby's 2 weeks from Friday. It would be an ideal first official appearance. And just like that, Cassidy Scott became the girlfriend of one of New York's most eligible bachelors, on paper at least. The following Monday, she visited Finn's office to sign the contract. Hartmann Innovations occupied the top floors of a sleek glass tower in Midtown. The reception area alone was larger than her entire apartment, with minimalist furniture and striking modern art on the walls. Finn met her personally, leading her to a conference room where a lawyer waited with the paperwork. The contract was surprisingly straightforward, outlining her duties: attend events, consult on art purchases, maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship in public, and the compensation, even more generous than initially discussed, with a clothing allowance and health insurance included. The press will investigate you, Finn warned as she reviewed the documents. Are there any skeletons in your closet I should know about? Cassidy laughed. Unless you count the time I accidentally set off the fire alarm in the Met while on a field trip in college, I'm boringly scandal-free. Good. We'll develop a story about how we met that's close enough to the truth to be believable. People are less likely to question something that contains elements of truth. After she signed the contract, Finn gave her a tour of the office. The walls were adorned with contemporary art, but it was a haphazard collection with no coherent theme or vision. Your first project, he said, gesturing to the artwork. Make this make sense. Buy what needs to be bought, sell what doesn't belong. I trust your judgment. It was a staggering vote of confidence from someone who had only known her for a few days. Just like that, you're giving me control over your corporate art collection? I recognize talent when I see it, he said simply. And I've done my research on you. Your graduate thesis on emerging digital artists and their impact on traditional gallery spaces was brilliant. Exactly the perspective I need. Cassidy felt a blush creep up her neck. You read my thesis? I like to know who I'm working with, he replied with a small smile. I'm thorough. The 2 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. Cassidy gave notice at the cafe, moved most of her belongings into storage. Finn had insisted she stay at his guest apartment during their relationship to maintain the illusion, and went on a shopping spree with the styling team Finn had arranged to help build her new public wardrobe. By the night of the Sotheby's auction, Cassidy had transformed externally into someone who could plausibly be dating Finn Hartmann. She wore a sleek red gown that accentuated her figure without being overtly sexy, with her dark hair styled in soft waves and minimal jewelry, just diamond studs and a delicate necklace that Finn had sent over that morning, with a note that read simply, "For luck." This time, when Finn arrived to pick her up, there was no awkwardness, no uncertainty about how to behave. They had spent hours discussing their strategy, rehearsing their how we met story, and reviewing the guest list for the auction. You look stunning, he said when she opened the door, his eyes warming as he took in her appearance. Thank you? She did a small twirl. Your stylist has excellent taste. The stylist just found the clothing. You're the one making it look like that. There was something in his tone that made her heart beat a little faster. The auction was smaller and more intimate than the museum gala had been, with only about 100 guests, all serious art collectors and industry insiders. As they entered, Finn's hand rested lightly on her lower back, a gesture that was becoming familiar. Remember, tonight is about establishing us as a couple in the art world, he murmured close to her ear. Feel free to express your opinions about the pieces. That's why you're here. What followed was one of the most exhilarating evenings of Cassidy's professional life. She found herself engaged in passionate discussions about brushwork and provenance, market trends, and artist trajectories. Finn stayed close, watching her with something like pride as she held her own with gallery owners and museum curators. When the actual auction began, Finn handed her the paddle. You choose, he said. Whatever speaks to you. Cassidy's heart raced. This was real trust he was giving her control over purchases that could cost hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. She selected carefully, bidding on 3 pieces that she believed would appreciate in value, while complementing the aesthetic direction she envisioned for his collection. By the end of the night, they had acquired a striking abstract oil painting by an emerging Brazilian artist, a hauntingly beautiful photograph by a renowned Japanese photographer, and a small but significant bronze sculpture by a mid-career American artist whose work Cassidy had long admired. Your selections were impeccable, Finn told her, as they left with the auction catalog noting their purchases. Particularly the Nakamura photograph. I've been watching his work for years, but never found the right piece. You know his work? Cassidy asked, surprised. I may not have your formal education, but I do appreciate art, he replied with a small smile. I just lack the vocabulary and connections to navigate this world effectively. That's where you come in. As they settled into the back of his car, Cassidy felt a rush of genuine happiness. For the first time in months, she had used her knowledge and passion in a meaningful way. The fact that it was all part of an elaborate pretense seemed suddenly less important. Thank you for trusting me tonight, she said quietly. With your reputation and your checkbook. Finn studied her face in the dim light of the car. You know what surprised me most about you that first night? Not your knowledge or your poise, impressive as those are. It was your authenticity. You don't perform or posture. It's rare in my world. Their eyes held for a moment longer than was necessary, and Cassidy felt something shift between them, a subtle change in the atmosphere that made her suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. Finn seemed to feel it too, because he cleared his throat and looked away. We should discuss next week's schedule. There's a dinner with potential investors on Tuesday, and I'd like you to visit the downtown office to assess the current artwork there. Just like that, the professional boundary reasserted itself. Cassidy nodded, pushing away the strange disappointment she felt. This was a business arrangement, she reminded herself. Nothing more. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a rhythm. During the day, Cassidy worked on curating Finn's art collection, researching artists, visiting galleries, and overseeing the installation of new pieces in his various properties. In the evenings, they often attended events together, presenting a convincing picture of a couple in the early, exciting stages of a relationship. It was surprisingly easy to pretend. Finn was unfailingly considerate, interesting to talk to, and attentive in ways that sometimes made Cassidy forget they were playing roles. He remembered her coffee order, noticed when she was tired, and genuinely valued her opinions on both art and business matters. The press had initially been skeptical of their relationship, digging into Cassidy's background and questioning how a barista with an art degree had captured the attention of one of New York's most eligible bachelors. But their consistent appearances together, coupled with the natural chemistry between them, gradually convinced the tabloids that this was the real thing. 1 month into their arrangement, Finn invited Cassidy to accompany him to Chicago for an important business conference. "It's 3 days," he explained over dinner at his penthouse, where they often met to discuss upcoming events. "You'd have your own suite, of course. During the day, you could visit some galleries I've been meaning to explore. The Art Institute has an exhibition I think you'd enjoy." "Sounds like you've thought this through," Cassidy said, taking a sip of the excellent wine he'd served. "I try to make this as beneficial for you as possible," he replied. "This isn't just about my image, it's about building your network too." The trip to Chicago marked a turning point in their relationship. Away from New York, in a city where they knew fewer people, the lines between their public and private personas began to blur. They spent evenings exploring the city together, finding small jazz clubs and hidden restaurants that felt far removed from the carefully orchestrated appearances they made in New York. On their final night, after a successful dinner with Finn's Chicago investors, they took a walk along the waterfront. The city lights reflected on Lake Michigan, creating a magical backdrop. "Thank you for coming with me," Finn said as they strolled. "The investors were impressed with your knowledge of their art collection. Harrison actually asked if you might consult for them as well." "Really?" Cassidy looked up at him in surprise. "That's... wow. You shouldn't be surprised. You're exceptional at what you do." He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about what happens when our arrangement ends." The statement sent an unexpected pang through Cassidy. She'd been so caught up in their daily interactions that she'd almost forgotten the temporary nature of their relationship. "What about it?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. "I'd like to help establish you professionally. I know several gallery owners who could benefit from your expertise. And I'm happy to make introductions or invest in your own venture, if that's what you want." "You'd invest in me starting my own gallery?" The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. "Why not? You've proven yourself more than capable." His hand found hers as they walked, a gesture that had become natural between them. "Think about it. No rush to decide." That night, back at their hotel, Cassidy found herself standing on the balcony of her suite, looking out at the city and trying to sort through her conflicted feelings. What had started as a straightforward business arrangement had evolved into something much more complicated, at least for her. She liked Finn, not just as her employer or the character she played opposite in public, but as a person. She enjoyed his dry sense of humor, the thoughtful questions he asked, the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he was truly amused rather than socially polite. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Finn standing there, still dressed in the suit he'd worn to dinner, but with the tie removed and his collar unbuttoned. "Sorry to disturb you," he said. "You left your phone at the restaurant. The maitre d' just had it delivered." "Oh, thank you." Cassidy took the phone, hyper-aware of him standing in her doorway. "I didn't even realize I'd forgotten it." Instead of leaving, Finn hesitated. "Is everything okay? You seemed distracted during the car ride back." "Just thinking about the future," she admitted. "Everything's happening so fast. 2 months ago, I was making lattes and worrying about rent. Now I'm helping build multi-million-dollar art collections and getting job offers from Chicago investment firms." "Is that a bad thing?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "No, it's amazing. It's just..." She struggled to articulate the real source of her unease without revealing too much. Sometimes I wonder where the line is between the real me and the person I'm pretending to be with you. They're starting to blur together. Finn's expression grew serious. I understand that feeling. He seemed about to say something more, then checked himself. We should both get some rest. Early flight tomorrow. But he didn't move from the doorway, and Cassidy found herself unwilling to end the conversation. Would you like to come in for a moment? I could use some company. He hesitated only briefly before nodding. They moved to the sitting area of her suite, Cassidy curling up in one corner of the sofa, while Finn took the chair opposite. Tell me something real, she said suddenly. Something not in your official biography or our rehearsed stories. Finn looked surprised, then thoughtful. I never wanted to run a technology company, he said finally. My passion was always architecture. I designed an app to help architectural firms manage projects more efficiently, and it just took off. Before I knew it, I was building a tech empire instead of buildings. Do you regret it? Cassidy asked. Not exactly. I've built something valuable, something that employs thousands of people and solves real problems. But sometimes I wonder about the road not taken. His gaze met hers. Your turn. Something real. Cassidy thought for a moment. I'm terrified of failing, she admitted. Everyone in my family expected great things from me, first one to go to college, much less get a master's degree. But then I couldn't find work in my field, and it felt like I was letting everyone down. Some days, I think this opportunity with you is too good to be true, that I'll wake up back in that cafe, wondering what might have been. You won't fail, Finn said with unexpected intensity. You have too much talent and drive, and even if this particular path doesn't work out exactly as planned, you'll find another way. You're resilient. The conviction in his voice warmed her. They talked for hours, sharing stories and perspectives that had nothing to do with their public personas or professional relationship. Cassidy learned about Finn's estranged relationship with his father, his close bond with his younger sister, and his secret passion for restoring vintage motorcycles. In turn, she told him about growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, her mother's battle with cancer during her college years, and her dream of someday opening a gallery that showcased overlooked artists from marginalized communities. It was well past midnight when Finn finally stood to leave. At the door, he paused. Thank you for tonight, he said quietly, for asking for something real. I didn't realize how much I needed that. On impulse, Cassidy reached up and hugged him. After a moment of surprise, his arms encircled her, holding her close. The embrace lasted longer than was strictly friendly, neither of them seeming willing to be the first to let go. When they finally separated, there was a new awareness between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that something had changed. Finn reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Good night, Cassidy, he said softly, before turning and walking down the hall to his own suite. After he left, Cassidy leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. This wasn't part of the plan. Developing real feelings for Finn Hartmann would only complicate an already complex situation. Yet she couldn't deny the connection that had been building between them, a connection that felt genuine despite the artificial nature of their arrangement. Back in New York, their professional routine resumed, but with subtle differences. Finn found more reasons to extend their time together beyond what was strictly necessary for their public appearances. He began asking for her input on business matters unrelated to art, valuing her perspective on everything from marketing campaigns to office design. For her part, Cassidy found herself looking forward to their evenings together with an eagerness that had nothing to do with professional advancement. She caught herself thinking about him during the day, wondering what he would think of a particular artist, or how he would react to a story she wanted to share. 3 months into their arrangement, they were invited to a weekend retreat at the Hamptons estate of Gerald Winters, a tech investor whose support was crucial for Finn's newest venture. It would be their first overnight stay as a couple in a social setting, a significant test of their ability to maintain the illusion around the clock. We'll have our own suite, Finn assured her, as they drove out of the city on Friday afternoon. But we'll need to be convincing at all times. These people are perceptive. I understand, Cassidy said, though she was more nervous about this weekend than any previous event. Maintaining a professional distance was becoming increasingly difficult, especially when they would be sharing such close quarters. The Winters estate was a sprawling beachfront property with manicured gardens and a main house that looked like it belonged in the pages of Architectural Digest. They were greeted warmly by Gerald and his wife Sophia, then shown to a luxurious suite with panoramic ocean views. "This is beautiful," Cassidy said as she explored the space. There was a king-sized bed in the center of the room, along with a sitting area, a private balcony, and a bathroom larger than her entire first apartment. Finn set their bags down, looking slightly tense. "I'll take the sofa," he said, nodding toward the sitting area. "You can have the bed." "Don't be ridiculous," Cassidy replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "That sofa isn't designed for sleeping. The bed is huge, we can share it without even knowing the other person is there." They were saved from further discussion by a knock at the door, announcing that cocktails would be served on the terrace in 30 minutes. The weekend was filled with carefully orchestrated leisure activities, sailing, tennis, and long dinners where the conversation inevitably turned to business opportunities and investment potential. Cassidy played her part flawlessly, charming the other guests while maintaining the perfect balance of affection and independence in her interactions with Finn. What she hadn't expected was how natural it would feel. When Finn placed his arm around her waist or kissed her cheek, it didn't feel like an act. When she laughed at his jokes or finished his sentences, it wasn't calculated. They had developed a genuine rapport that made their relationship seem authentic because, in many ways, it was. On Saturday night, after a formal dinner, the group gathered in the main living room for drinks and conversation. Cassidy found herself cornered by Sophia Winters, a shrewd woman with a reputation for uncovering people's secrets. "You and Finn seem very well matched," Sophia observed, sipping her martini. "He's different with you, more relaxed, less guarded." "He works too hard," Cassidy replied, her eyes finding Finn across the room, where he was engaged in conversation with Gerald. "I try to help him find balance." "And what do you get out of it?" Sophia asked bluntly. Besides the obvious material benefits of dating someone of his stature, Cassidy felt a flicker of indignation. "I had a life and career goals before I met Finn," she said firmly. "Those haven't changed. What I get from our relationship is a partner who supports my ambitions and challenges me intellectually. The rest is just window dressing." Sophia studied her for a long moment before breaking into a genuine smile. "Good answer. And I believe you mean it, which is refreshing. Most of the women who've pursued Finn over the years couldn't say the same." Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Cassidy recounted the conversation to Finn. "Sophia was testing you," he confirmed, emerging from the bathroom in pajama pants and a t-shirt. "She does that with everyone she meets. Few pass." "Did I pass?" Cassidy asked, sitting on the edge of the massive bed in the silk pajama set she'd packed for the weekend. "With flying colors, apparently. Gerald told me Sophia thinks you're the real deal, high praise from her." He hesitated before adding, "She's right, you know. I am different with you." The admission hung in the air between them. Cassidy's heart raced as Finn moved to sit beside her on the bed. "Cassidy," he began, his voice serious, "I need to tell you something. This arrangement between us—" A loud knock at their door interrupted him. Finn rose to answer it, finding a flustered-looking house staff member, informing them that a pipe had burst in the west wing, and they needed to check if there was any water damage in their bathroom. By the time the minor crisis was resolved, their suite was unaffected. The moment had passed. They slipped into bed on opposite sides, a respectful distance between them, despite the earlier tension. "What were you going to say?" Cassidy asked softly in the darkness. Before the interruption, Finn was silent for so long that she thought he might have fallen asleep. Finally he spoke, his voice low and careful. "I was going to say that this arrangement has become complicated for me. My feelings aren't as clearly defined as they were at the beginning." Cassidy's breath caught. "Mine either," she admitted. He turned toward her, though she could barely make out his features in the dim light. "We should talk about this properly, but not here. Not when we're still playing these roles." "When we get back to New York," she agreed. Neither of them moved closer physically, but something fundamental had shifted between them. The acknowledgement of mutual confusion, or perhaps mutual interest, changed the energy in the room. They fell asleep that way, separated by physical space, but connected by a new understanding that their relationship had evolved beyond its original parameters. The drive back to New York on Sunday afternoon was quiet, both of them lost in thought. When they arrived at Finn's building, he walked Cassidy to the guest apartment she'd been using. "Dinner tomorrow?" he asked. "My place, no audience, just us. We can talk properly then." "I'd like that," she replied, feeling strangely shy. That night, alone in the guest apartment, Cassidy tried to sort through her conflicted feelings. She had developed genuine feelings for Finn, that much she could no longer deny. But could anything real grow from a relationship that had begun as a business transaction? And even if it could, would Finn ever truly see her as an equal? Or would she always be the woman he had essentially hired to play a part in his life? The next day passed in a blur of work-related tasks. Cassidy visited a gallery in Soho to view a collection they were considering for Finn's new office in Boston, then met with a framing specialist about several recent acquisitions. All the while, her mind kept returning to the upcoming dinner and the conversation that waited there. When she arrived at Finn's penthouse that evening, she was surprised to find him in the kitchen, cooking. "I didn't know you could cook," she said, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "There are still a few things you don't know about me," he replied with a small smile, though admittedly not many at this point. Dinner was delicious, a perfectly prepared steak with roasted vegetables and a truffle risotto that rivaled any restaurant version Cassidy had ever tried. They kept the conversation light at first, discussing an upcoming art auction and the progress on the Boston office collection. It wasn't until they moved to the living room with fresh glasses of wine that Finn finally broached the subject that had been hovering between them since the Hamptons. "I've been thinking about our arrangement," he began, sitting beside her on the sofa, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, but not quite touching. "So have I," Cassidy said, her heart racing. "When we started this, the parameters seemed clear. You would help me navigate the art world and provide a buffer against unwanted personal scrutiny. I would provide financial compensation and professional connections." He set his wine glass down and turned to face her fully. "But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like a business arrangement to me." Cassidy nodded, not trusting herself to speak yet. "I find myself looking forward to seeing you, not because of what you can do for me professionally, but because I enjoy your company," Finn continued. "I catch myself thinking about you during the day, wondering what you'd think about a business decision or if you'd like a restaurant I've discovered. That wasn't part of our agreement." "No, it wasn't," Cassidy agreed softly. "I've been experiencing the same thing. It's confusing." "Extremely," Finn said with a rueful smile. "I've never been in this position before. I don't know how to transition from what we have to whatever this might become." "Neither do I," Cassidy admitted. "And there are complications. You're still paying me. There's an inherent power imbalance there that makes any personal relationship problematic." Finn nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. "So, where does that leave us?" Cassidy took a deep breath. "I think we need to end our business arrangement," she said. "Not because I don't want to continue working with you, but because we can't explore whatever this is between us while I'm essentially your employee. And if we end the business arrangement and discover that, without it, there isn't anything between us?" Finn asked, his expression guarded. "Then at least we'll know," Cassidy replied. "But continuing as we are, with these unacknowledged feelings complicating everything, it's not sustainable." Finn was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. "You're right," he said finally. "We need a clean slate, no contract, no financial arrangement between us. Just two people seeing where this might lead." "But my work on your art collection," Cassidy began, "can be handled by a traditional consulting firm until we figure this out," Finn finished for her. "Your career advancement is still important, but we'll need to find a way to support that without it being directly tied to me." Relief and anxiety warred within Cassidy. This was what she wanted: a chance to explore her connection with Finn without the complications of their business relationship, but it also meant stepping into the unknown. What if, without the structure of their arrangement, they discovered they had nothing in common? What if her feelings were stronger than his? "So, what now?" she asked. "Now," Finn said, reaching for her hand, "I'd like to ask you on a real date, not as my fake girlfriend or my art consultant, but as a man asking a woman he admires to dinner." Cassidy smiled, twining her fingers with his. I'd like that. There's one more thing, Finn said, his expression turning serious again. The press doesn't know our relationship began as an arrangement, and I think it's best if it stays that way, not just for my reputation, but for yours as well. The art world can be judgmental, and I don't want this unusual beginning to harm your career prospects. I agree, Cassidy said. As far as the world is concerned, we met when you hired me as an art consultant, and our professional relationship evolved into something personal. It's close enough to the truth. With some critical omissions, Finn noted wryly. Their eyes met, and the tension that had been building between them for weeks reached a breaking point. Finn leaned forward, hesitating just a breath away from her lips, giving her the chance to pull away. Instead, Cassidy closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when Finn's hand came up to cup her face, the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more honest than anything they had shared before. There was no audience here, no performance for the benefit of others. This was real. When they finally broke apart, Cassidy felt slightly dizzy. That was long overdue, Finn finished, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. I've been wanting to do that for weeks. Me too, she admitted, though I kept telling myself it was a bad idea. It probably was, he agreed with a small smile. Until now. They spent the rest of the evening talking about what came next. Finn would formally terminate their contract, with a generous severance package that Cassidy initially resisted, but eventually accepted as her due for the work she had already completed. She would move out of the guest apartment and back to her own place, giving them space to develop their relationship naturally without the artificial intimacy their arrangement had created. As for her career, Finn had already spoken to a friend who owned a prestigious gallery in Chelsea. They needed a curator with fresh ideas and strong academic credentials, exactly what Cassidy offered. The interview was set for the following week. It's not a guaranteed position, Finn clarified. You'll need to impress them on your own merits, but at least you'll get in the door. That's all I've ever needed, Cassidy said. Just a chance to show what I can do. When she left his apartment that night, it was with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They were stepping into unfamiliar territory, attempting to build something genuine from a foundation that had been intentionally artificial. It wouldn't be easy, but as Finn kissed her goodbye at the door, Cassidy felt a surge of hope that this unexpected journey might lead somewhere wonderful. The transition wasn't as smooth as they had hoped. Ending their business relationship proved more complicated than expected, with Finn's legal team insisting on various clauses and conditions that made Cassidy feel like she was being paid off rather than moving toward a genuine relationship. Meanwhile, the press had noticed their sudden change in public behavior. Where they had once been regularly photographed at events together, they now appeared separately, or not at all. Speculation began about trouble in their relationship, with some tabloids suggesting Cassidy had been using Finn for career advancement, and others claiming Finn had moved on to a new model he'd been seen speaking to at a tech conference. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid by hiring you in the first place, Finn said in frustration one evening, showing Cassidy the latest tabloid headline. Hartmann Hart's computer models. Tech mogul dumps art expert for Silicon Valley beauty. It'll blow over, Cassidy assured him, though she had to admit the headline stung. Once we're seen together again, acting like a normal couple, they'll find something else to write about. That was easier said than done. Their attempt to transition to a normal dating relationship was complicated by their history and the constant public scrutiny. Their first official date after ending their arrangement was interrupted by a persistent photographer who followed them from the restaurant to the small jazz club Finn had wanted to show her. I'm sorry about this, Finn said, as they left the club early, pursued by camera flashes. This isn't how I wanted our evening to go. It's not your fault, Cassidy replied, though she couldn't help feeling disappointed. Was this what dating Finn would always be like, constantly observed, their every move documented and analyzed? The interview at the Chelsea Gallery went well, but Cassidy couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been offered the position because of her connection to Finn rather than her qualifications. The gallery owner had mentioned their relationship multiple times during the interview, clearly seeing it as an asset to the gallery's profile. I want to be hired for my expertise, not because I'm dating a famous tech entrepreneur, she confided to Finn afterward. "You are being hired for your expertise," he insisted. Marcus wouldn't risk his gallery's reputation by bringing in someone unqualified, regardless of who they're dating. But the doubt lingered, feeding into Cassidy's larger insecurities about their relationship. Had anything between them ever been genuine, or was it all an extension of their initial business arrangement? Their relationship hit a critical point 1 month after they had officially begun dating. Cassidy had started her new position at the gallery, which was demanding but fulfilling. Finn was in the final stages of a major acquisition deal that kept him working late hours and traveling frequently. They had barely seen each other for 2 weeks when Finn invited her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant known for its privacy and discretion. "I've missed you," he said when they were seated in a secluded corner booth. "These past weeks have been crazy." "I've missed you too," Cassidy admitted, "though I've kept up with you through page 6. Apparently you're either reconciling with your ex-model girlfriend or secretly engaged to a British aristocrat, depending on which tabloid you read." Finn grimaced. "Hence the choice of restaurant tonight. No photographers allowed inside." He reached across the table to take her hand. "How are things at the gallery?" "Good. Challenging. Marcus has me organizing a show featuring emerging artists from non-traditional backgrounds. It's exactly the kind of work I've always wanted to do." She hesitated before adding, "Though I sometimes wonder if he gave me the project because of my own merits or because of other factors." "You mean me?" Finn said directly. "Not just you, our whole history. The way we started, the press coverage, it all affects how people see me professionally." Finn was quiet for a moment, absently running his thumb over her knuckles. "I understand that concern. I've faced similar questions throughout my career, whether people support my ventures because of their merit or because of my family name and connections." "How do you deal with it?" Cassidy asked. "By focusing on the work itself. Ultimately, a good idea succeeds or fails based on its own merits, regardless of what got it in the door." His eyes met hers. "Your exhibition will be judged by the quality of the art and your curatorial vision, not by who you're dating." "I hope you're right," Cassidy said, "because I really want this to work, both the gallery position and us." "I want that too," Finn said, his expression unusually vulnerable. "More than I expected to. Which is why I wanted to talk to you tonight, about where we're going." Cassidy felt her pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" "I mean that we started this relationship backward, beginning with a business arrangement that mimicked intimacy, then trying to find our way to something real. It's made everything more complicated than it needed to be." He took a deep breath. "I care about you, Cassidy. Not as my art consultant or my pretend girlfriend, but as the remarkable woman you are. I want to see where this could go without the shadows of our past arrangement hanging over us." "How do we do that?" Cassidy asked softly. "By being completely honest with each other. No more contracts, no more performing for others. Just us, figuring this out together." He squeezed her hand. "What do you want, Cassidy? Not what you think I want to hear, or what makes the most sense professionally, but what you truly want for yourself." The question caught her off guard. What did she want? Since meeting Finn, everything had happened so quickly that she'd barely had time to consider her own desires beyond the immediate opportunities he presented. "I want a meaningful career in the art world," she began slowly. "I want to help artists who might otherwise be overlooked find their audience. And I want—" She looked up at him, allowing herself to be completely honest. "I want to be with someone who sees me for who I really am, not just what I can do for them. Someone who challenges me and supports me in equal measure. I think that person might be you, but I'm still figuring that out." Finn nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "That's fair. I'm still figuring it out too. But I'd like to continue figuring it out together, if you're willing." "I am," Cassidy said, realizing as she spoke that it was true. Despite the complications and uncertainties, what she felt for Finn was real and worth exploring. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. They agreed to be more intentional about making time for each other, despite their busy schedules. Finn would come to her apartment for dinner, rather than always meeting at expensive restaurants where they might be photographed. Cassidy would share her work with him, not as a consultant, but as a partner seeking support and feedback. Gradually, they built something that felt authentic. Cassidy met Finn's younger sister, Emma, who immediately took a liking to her, and confided that she'd never seen her brother so relaxed with anyone before. Finn spent Thanksgiving with Cassidy's family in Pennsylvania, winning over her skeptical father with his genuine interest in the older man's woodworking hobby and impressing her mother by helping with the dishes without being asked. 6 months after they had officially begun dating, 9 months after they first met, Finn took Cassidy to the Museum of Modern Art on a Monday when it was closed to the public. As a major donor, he occasionally had access to the space for private events. "How did you manage this?" Cassidy asked, as they wandered through the empty galleries, their footsteps echoing in the vast spaces. "I made a donation to their education program," Finn said with a small smile, "and promised the director I wouldn't touch anything." They stopped in front of a painting Cassidy had always loved, a vibrant abstract work that seemed to capture both chaos and harmony in the same frame. "Do you remember the first night we met?" Finn asked, standing close beside her. "The charity gala at the Met?" "Of course," Cassidy replied. "I was terrified and trying not to show it." "You were magnificent," he said. "Not because you were beautiful, though you were, but because you were so completely yourself in a room full of people pretending to be something they're not. You spoke about art with genuine passion rather than social calculation. It caught me off guard." "I thought you barely noticed me that night, beyond making sure I didn't embarrass you," Cassidy admitted. "I noticed everything about you," Finn said quietly. "I just didn't want you to know how much. It would have complicated our arrangement." "And now?" Cassidy asked, turning to face him. "Now, I want you to know exactly how I feel." Finn took both her hands in his. "I love you, Cassidy, not because you helped my public image or curated my art collection, but because you're the most authentic person I've ever known. You've shown me that there's more to life than business acquisitions and stock valuations. You've made me better." Cassidy felt tears welling in her eyes. "I love you too," she said, the words coming easily now that they were finally spoken aloud. "Even though this whole situation started in the most backward way possible." "About that," Finn said, his expression turning serious. "There's something I need to confess." Cassidy's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "The night we met, at the charity gala. I already knew who you were before Zoe suggested you as my date." "What do you mean?" Cassidy asked, confused. "I'd seen you before, at the cafe where you worked. I was there for a meeting with a potential investor and you brought our coffee. You were discussing a gallery opening with one of your co-workers, analyzing the curator's choices with more insight than most professional critics I've read. I was intrigued." "So you asked Zoe about me?" Cassidy was trying to process this revelation. "Not immediately, but when my usual date canceled for the gala and I mentioned needing a replacement to Zoe, she suggested her roommate who knew about art. When she showed me your picture, I recognized you right away." "So our meeting wasn't entirely coincidental," Cassidy said slowly. "No," Finn admitted. "Though I had no idea where it would lead, I certainly never expected to fall in love with you." Cassidy was quiet for a moment, absorbing this new information. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I don't want any secrets between us anymore," Finn said. "And because—" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, different from the one that had contained the diamond bracelet so many months ago. "Because I'm asking you to marry me, and I want you to know exactly who you're saying yes to if you say yes." He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring surrounded by small diamonds. It was elegant, but understated, exactly the kind of piece Cassidy would have chosen for herself. "Finn," she breathed, staring at the ring. "I know it's fast," he said quickly. "And I know our beginning was unusual, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're the person I want to build a future with, Cassidy. Not because you fit some role in my life, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Tears spilled onto Cassidy's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you." Finn slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning. The conclusion of their complicated journey from business arrangement to genuine love, and the start of a new chapter neither of them had anticipated when they first met. 1 year later, they were married in a small ceremony at Finn's restored farmhouse in upstate New York. The guest list was limited to close friends and family, with Zoe serving as Cassidy's maid of honor. The press, which had finally accepted their relationship as genuine, was kept at a distance with the promise of official photos to be released afterward. Cassidy had left the Chelsea Gallery 6 months earlier to start her own small exhibition space in Brooklyn. Funded partially by Finn, but primarily by a group of investors who valued her vision for showcasing underrepresented artists. The venture was already gaining positive attention in the art world, with critics praising her innovative approach and keen eye for emerging talent. As they danced together at their reception, Finn held her close, whispering in her ear, "Happy?" "Completely," Cassidy replied, leaning back to look into his eyes. "Though if someone had told me a year and a half ago that agreeing to be your fake date would lead to this, I would have thought they were crazy." "Sometimes the least likely beginnings lead to the most perfect endings," Finn said, spinning her gently under the twinkling lights that had been strung across the restored barn where they held their reception. Later that night, after their guests had departed, they stood together on the porch of the farmhouse, looking up at the stars. "Thank you," Finn said suddenly. "For what?" Cassidy asked, nestled against his side. "For taking a chance on a business arrangement that must have seemed bizarre at best. For seeing the real me behind the public persona. For loving me despite our unconventional start." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Most of all, for turning what was supposed to be pretend into something genuinely wonderful." Cassidy smiled, thinking about the strange, unexpected path that had brought them to this moment. "I think that's the best kind of love story," she said softly. "The one neither of us saw coming." As they stood there under the vast night sky, Cassidy reflected on how drastically her life had changed since that desperate day when she'd received a text asking if she'd pretend to be someone's date. What had begun as a financial transaction had transformed into something priceless, a partnership based on mutual respect, shared passions, and genuine love. Sometimes, she thought, the most beautiful realities begin with the most unlikely pretenses, and in her case, agreeing to pretend had led her to something more real than she could have ever imagined.